Welcome to Blaze News, The Mandate. It's our last day here in Washington, D.C. Not the last day forever. We come back now quite often. I'm Jill Savage, of course, joined by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson. And we have a great guest here with us. Indiana Congressman Marlin Stutzman is kind enough to join us here. It's been quite a week, Congressman.
It has.
It has been. There's no lack of things in the news happening right now, and I know that you actually were just meeting with one of the big newsmakers. Obviously, is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu out of Israel, and you recently just spent some time with him.
Yeah, actually, less than 2 weeks ago, we were in Jerusalem and met with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and you could tell at the top of his mind were the hostages in Gaza, and that was the day that they started changing the humanitarian aid coming from us rather than through Qatar, Hamas, and that did actually make a big impact. But then the thing that was on top of his mind after that was, of course, Iran, and we were told before we went over there that there was a chance that Israel could attack the nuclear sites in Iran, and that we just needed to be aware of that. And so I was actually talking to some of the others that were on that trip, and they're like, "My goodness, we were right there." But Iran cannot have a nuclear program. Period. They have shown over and over they're a sponsor of terrorism around the Middle East. And you know what? It shouldn't be just Iran that is in there taking out these sites. Saudi Arabia should be joining them. Turkey should be joining them, because if Iran has a nuclear weapon, those countries are at risk as well. So, standing with Israel in this case, and having President Trump knowing that he's the strongest negotiator and the strongest diplomat since Ronald Reagan is comforting today. Even though this is going to be a rough patch to go through here, but it has to be done. They can't have a nuclear weapon.
Well, we certainly hope for peace and justice there. I want to also ask about something that is closer to home and is also, I think, close to the hearts of many people in our audience and many Americans. You are holding people accountable both in the U.S. and abroad, and you have this Emergency Spending Accountability Act that aims to restore fiscal discipline. Now, I heard about this, and it really piqued my interest because it felt like it made a lot of sense.
Someone is listening.
And I thought we need people to hear you talk about this.
Yeah, thank you, because oftentimes, we as Americans, we would think that Congress has a rainy day fund for emergencies. We know they're going to happen. We know they're going to come at some point, just like we saw the hurricanes in Florida and all the way up into North Carolina. And we saw, of course, people not being taken care of by our federal government when Joe Biden was the president. And then, back to COVID and Hurricane Sandy, or whether it's fires in California, we don't have a rainy day fund. We just simply pass an emergency spending bill and put the cost onto the credit card for the American taxpayer. So I filed the Emergency Spending Accountability Act, which simply says if you're going to spend money on an emergency, you have to pay it back within 5 years, 20% for 1 year each year after it's passed. And the other thing that I think is important for us all to realize is, of the $27 trillion of debt that we have that's public debt, 12 trillion of that comes from emergency spending. Remember, Rahm Emanuel said back during the recession, you never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, Washington didn't, and they spent $12 trillion outside of our budget on emergency spending. Some of this is even in sprinkler systems for golf courses. It's ridiculous.
This sounds like healthcare, right? When people don't have insurance,
exactly,
you go through and, oh, by the way, now you have to go into the emergency room and it's going to be, 12 times more expensive, or whatever the numbers are right now. It would actually make some good fiscal sense to prepare for something. So where does it stand right now, and what can people do?
So we just filed a bill, and we've got quite a few co-sponsors on it. Other Republicans think it's a good idea. So, if you see your member of Congress, senator or House member, ask them to support the Emergency Spending Accountability Act, because it's going to happen again. We know there's going to be another emergency, and of course, Congress loves to overreact and do things that aren't necessary. And so ask them to be a co-sponsor, and then we're going to try to get a hearing on it in the Budget Committee here before long. But we'd like to get as many sponsors on the bill and make as much awareness of it in Congress as we can.
Well, that's music to the ears for everyone in the audience. We want to actually see these things happen. So let's talk about the budget. Let's get into that. I mean, Where, in your view, are we now, in this process?
Yeah, I think we're going the right direction. It's not as far. I mean, some of us we could do this right here on a napkin. We could take care of the problems right here between the three of us. But even like yesterday, we voted on the rescissions package, which cut USAID, and it cut PBS, and it cut NPR. Doesn't seem like that'd be too hard of a lift, but we'd even had some Republicans that needed some arm twisting at the end to pass the rescissions package yesterday. So if we back up and you look at the one big beautiful bill, which I like to lovingly call OB3, but we got that passed in the House, and that is really more of a tax bill. There's some spending in there for the border and also for the Golden Dome, which is really critical because China is building up an intercontinental ballistic missile inventory like we have never seen. And so Golden Dome is going to help protect the country and allies with a country like China. But then now it's in the Senate. And I think the Senate, there's senators that are trying to even take it further and more spending cuts, more reductions, and letting the American people keep more money in their pockets rather than it coming to Washington, D.C. So between that, what DOGE is doing and what the rescissions packages are, I hope that's the first of many rescissions packages that we see, because Department of Energy has places we can cut. There's even Department of Defense. There's places in our Defense Department. I hear from my friends that are over at the Pentagon. They're like, this place is wasting money. So I hope the cool thing now is to have spending cuts rather than more spending in Washington.
That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to push for it as well and help you guys out with that, because we all want to see a more fiscally responsible country. But okay, so you laid out the good stuff, but this is the swamp.
Yes.
There's always going to be some obstacles
There is.
to all of this. So what are some of those?
Well, I would say the first one is the SALT deduction, because we're going to basically take money from taxpayers in conservative states, and it's going to be, they're not going to get the same reduction as what taxpayers are in New York, California, and Illinois or New Jersey. I honestly believe that these liberal states are what is ruining the country. Let me give you an example. On Medicaid, that's another place that we could find a lot of savings. Over the last several years, people have figured out how to basically defraud the taxpayer in America by government programs. These non-governmental organizations, NGOs, have been set up by Democrats over the last several decades, and all this money goes into funding these programs. I mean, USAID was the worst culprit, and thankfully we're just cutting it off at the knees and just stopping it. And people say, oh, well, we got to help the person, this group in Africa, or we got to help this group in the Middle East. You know what? How about helping Americans? And let's look out for America first. That's why President Trump won, because of his America First agenda. Let's make sure our border is secure and safe, that we don't have people that we don't know what they're going to do come across the border. So I would say that we got to cut out. I mean, Department of Education, get rid of it. The states can handle this. It's not like we're not going to have an education system, which the Democrats would like to say, oh, you're going to throw 11 million people off of health care. That's not true. If you're here illegally, yes, you will be thrown off. If you're here and you're not willing to go to work, you will lose your Medicaid benefits. This is for people who desperately need help. And a lot of that is happening more and more because Obamacare was actually a hurt to the American taxpayer and the healthcare providers rather than a help.
Okay, so when is this thing gonna happen?
Well,
President, get to the finish line.
President Trump said last night he wants it on his desk by July 4th, and he's got a heavy thumb. So I hope he continues to put pressure on the Senate to get it done by the 4th of July.
All right, so that's all the real news talk for us. But we also had some fun this week, right? There was a congressional baseball game, and you were participating in it. Thankfully,
this is the real thing we had him on, because he was one of the stars. So he proved himself in the game.
I will say, he crushed it. It was so much fun out there. It was actually the first time that we had gone to it. But just take us through what this is like, because it looked like, I mean, you guys were out there, you practice at 6 a.m. For about 2 months, we're told.
Since March 1st. Roger Williams is our coach from Texas, and he cracks the whip.
That's a lot of time to put in. So just take us through all of that.
Because it sounded to me like one of the healthiest things I'd heard about America in the last few months was the fact that you guys were practicing like this.
Yeah, I mean, baseball's all American. Even though I come from the Hoosier State, where I got to throw a plug in for the Pacers.
Let's go.
Oh,
go
GM
Pacers.
is one of my good buddies, so we're all on board.
Good.
Yeah, I make him cheer for him too. Don't worry.
Well, but this congressional baseball game is a long history. In fact, it was only canceled a couple of times during World War II era. But it's where Republicans play Democrats, and we take it very seriously. We get up at 5 a.m. to go practice about 3 times a week, and the Republicans do. I don't know that the Democrats do. But
The Democrats
Didn't look
also-
like they were practicing much.
They
of that.
also can't get the same uniforms. Like, I don't think this is a hard thing. The Republicans all had the same uniform. It was red and it said USA. The Democrats are like wearing black and white and blue. And I'm like, well, who put this together?
well, I think we beat them to the punch. And if we have the USA uniform, what are they going to put on theirs? So maybe that's
There's a lot of submissions that we could take for
this
that.
is their strategy: confuse everybody. So, but we won, and we won big. And I had a double. I got a couple of RBIs, and I got to, more importantly, do the Trump dance on second base. That's what I wanted to really get done that night.
Thank you for coming in, giving us some of your time, Congressman Marlin Stutzman. There's been a lot of news, but also it's a Friday. We want to have some fun as well. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll have Steve Baker with us right after this. After President Trump mobilized the National Guard in Los Angeles, Nancy Pelosi made quite the claim, but it wasn't the slam dunk that she intended it to be.
In a bipartisan way, on January 6th, with violence against the Constitution, against the Congress, and against the United States Capitol, we begged the President of the United States to send in the National Guard. He would not do it. Not only would he not do it, when law enforcement people were being harmed, some later died, he would not send it in when an instigation that an insurrection that he incited was causing damage to those assigned to protect the Capitol and the Constitution that day, to accept the results of the Electoral College. That day, he didn't do it. He forgave those people. Now his people want to raise money for them, and yet, in a contra-constitutional way, he has sent the National Guard into California. Something is very wrong with this picture.
Well, something is very wrong with this picture. Nancy Pelosi, she's begging Donald Trump to send in the National Guard for more. Let's go ahead and bring in Blaze Media investigative reporter Steve Baker, because I know, Steve, you have a lot more on this than just what Nancy wanted people out there just to believe on the surface, when she's just out there begging Donald Trump to bring in the National Guard, right, Steve?
What did they call it? Lies and damn lies, things of that nature. But in this particular instance, I have to be very careful, don't I, about this? I've got my editor-in-chief sitting here right here in
Need to
front of
be
me.
careful. I would say, just before we go any further, people need to realize that we wrote the fact check about this before Pelosi even said anything, because you and Joe Hanneman knew that this was going to come up. And so the fact check for her was written before she said anything, because of what the truth is.
There is no one in this country who's done more work on this one particular situation or issue than Joe Hanneman and myself. We're talking about more work than the J6 original select committee did, and Pelosi's committee. More work than even Loudermilk's committee did when he was had the oversight committee under House administration. All that. We actually went all the way to the source. We went to the guy who set up the actual Zoom call. That's not what they call it at the Pentagon, but the guy who actually, they used his system for the call between the generals, between the National Guard that day, who set it up for them. That's former Assistant Secretary of the Army, Casey Wardynski. He was on the call with them that day, eyewitness, ear witness to the event, and where he heard, see, we always thought that the phrase, we don't like the optics, we always thought that originated with Nancy Pelosi. It actually originated with the generals, the sycophants of General Milley, who were on that call, 3-star, 4-star generals, who said, yeah, we don't like the optics of delivering the National Guard to the Capitol. That was passed along then to the what they, I wrote an article before I was with the Blaze in which I said who was up the chain on January 6th. It was specifically dealing with the National Guard issue. And who was up the chain was over this point. When the National Guard was asked for, one of the sergeants at arms, it was the House Sergeant at Arms, Paul Irving, who said, I'll run it up the chain. This was Capitol Police Chief Stephen Son asked, demanding, requiring, please send me the National Guard. He said, I'll run it up the chain. Well, we always thought, well, up the chain is Nancy Pelosi. And it is, because she had the final say over it. But when they ran it up the chain, it went to the Pentagon, and the Pentagon came back with, we don't like the optics. That came back through Nancy's office, passed back down to Paul Irving and Michael Stinger, who was the Sergeant at Arms of the Senate at the time. And that was what they got, was we don't like the optics of that. This came directly from them. And for Nancy Pelosi to come out and say that this never happened is a complete falsehood, because now we know through multiple sources, and we could list them here for the next 30 minutes. And I know I don't have that long to go into the story today, but we know that President Trump actually asked for 3 days in advance as much as 20,000 National Guard troops to be deployed that day in the Capitol for whatever reason they were needed to protect everyone and keep everyone safe. And that was denied at the highest level. It was denied by Mayor Bowser. It was denied by Nancy Pelosi. It was denied by even President Trump's own appointees to the highest levels of the Pentagon.
Yeah, and this fact check is great. People should go and read it, because it lays all this out, and this is something that's just incontrovertible. But it's also something that I believe most Americans have no idea. So, everyone, when we started this, people were saying then that J6 was passé, it was over. No one's interested in these stories anymore. It's already been a few years and it's done. And of course, we were just talking before the break. You were saying it's not done. It's in it's in a ton of stories this week, and one of those is the Harry Dunn making an appearance again. Your nemesis, or your favorite Capitol Hill police officer,
right.
Ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't looked at the stories about him, you should. This guy really did nothing the entire day, or worse than nothing, and they made him a hero. But why is he in the news again? He just doesn't go away.
Well, first of all, January 6th has been in the news every day this week.
Yeah.
Because everyone on the left-wing media, everyone on social media is comparing January 6th to the riots in L.A. Why are they getting by with this when the police reaction, the reaction to the protesters, who's not being charged, who's being charged,
Right?
And it's a back and forth between the left and the right, the people in the social media, the grassroots. They're all arguing over it. January 6th is not going away, and it's not going away until we solve this problem. And the first problem is, and I know I'm not evading your question, we're circling back to it. The first problem is that we first have to understand why January 6th happened. The second thing we have to understand, and this is what I looked dead in the eye of Speaker Johnson, and I said, with all due respect, sir, you don't understand. Until you understand what was happening at the district courthouse, the precedents that were being set in the courtrooms every single day that are going to now be applied to the entire nation, L.A., Seattle, New York, et cetera, those precedents are going to be applied there. And until we understand them, you don't understand January 6th. Now, to your question, why is Harry Dunn in the news every day? Because Harry Dunn is making those same statements. We've got CBS News, we've got Scott MacFarlane from CBS News doing written stories, bringing him on CBS News for video commentary and proclaiming that he's right. Then you've got Harry Dunn's lawyer, Mark Zaid, coming on saying, my client, Harry Dunn, is absolutely 100% correct on these issues, to which I responded on X and said, well, if he's 100% right, can you explain to me why in the hundreds of mainstream media interviews that Harry Dunn has done in the last 4.5 years, why has not one single media source, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, NPR, et cetera, The View, why has no one showed 1 second of video of Harry Dunn doing what he claimed to do and being where he claimed to be on January 2nd. And it's because it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
We like to find the liars and call them out here, Steve. We do. And we're lucky that Matthew Peterson lets us do it.
Yeah.
So speaking
Thankfully.
of liars, let's talk about Congress on January 6th.
Where do we
segue.
start?
Easy
That's a
segue. But we're not talking about lies yet with this one. We're talking about justice and the truth when it comes to January 6th.
Okay.
And we've been following this story for a while. We're going to say more about it, I suppose, in the future. But there's a problem with Congress, let's just say, not acting in the way that it should in bringing about justice and truth when it comes to the events of that day.
You know, I'm going to give you a long circular answer going to this. Long before I came to work for the Blaze, I would listen to Glenn Beck do interviews with candidates for congressional seats, GOP guys, right? Governorships, such as that. And not only would, at the end of the interviews, would he ask them, you know, what's your relationship with the Lord? But more importantly, he would always go, okay, everything you're saying is right. I don't know you, but I love what you're saying. Just don't lie to me.
Mm-hmm.
Don't lie to me.
Yeah.
And when you called me and offered me a job, I told you that the only company that I was willing to go to work for and give up my independence to work for, first conversation you and I had, I said, was the Blaze. I said, I'm not blowing wind up your skirt. I said, but I've always said that. I would only go to work for them. And you were like, well, why is that? And I said, that issue. And I said, the other thing is that 15, 18 years ago on the radio, I heard Glenn Beck say, we will always lead with our mistakes. And it was the integrity issue. Well, the integrity issue goes back to the opposite of the lying issue. So now I've laid the groundwork for the answer to your question. Sorry for being so verbose. But the reason why we're doing what we're doing now with relationship to a particular congressman is not because we want to be firing arrows into our own tent. We don't want to do that. And we know that we have narrow margins in Congress. We have narrow margins in Senate. We have narrow margins everywhere. It's almost a 50-50 country on all aspects and all issues. But in this particular issue, if we're talking about Congressman Corey Mills, if he's willing to lie to us about this issue, if you and I, Jill, listed the top 10,
Oh, we could come up with a
today,
good list.
we could come up with a top 10.
Yeah.
And if he's willing to lie to us about that, then maybe as a conservative / libertarian leading news organization, maybe we need to not be worried about what the margins are in Congress and be more worried about the country and make sure that there's not bigger issues that we're being lied to about.
It's a crazy idea.
And make sure
worry
that
about the
people that are in these positions don't feel comfortable enough to just let behavior like this continue. If they go, oh man, if I do something, someone might call me out on it, right?
Yeah.
At least have that in their head, because right now, where is that even happening outside of here?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And as a result of that, some of us have felt compelled to spend a little more time than we normally would on an issue. Not because, look, I don't want to take any one person out. I don't care about their personal peccadillos or anything like that. But when it comes to national security issues and the fact that because of the types of things that they're involved in, they can be compromised, then they compromise not just my future. Look, you know, I'm an older guy, but I have children in their 20s. I'm worried about their country, what's going forward. And if it's us who has to clean house, then let's clean house.
And we're doing it now. But there is concern about January 6th just going away, right? Congress and everyone else just sort of, okay, we're done here. Trump won. And I think that everything you see this week in the news shows this is one of those examples of the other side lying, but then the right just letting it go. And I think we're blessed to have an audience that cares about this issue deeply that follows it, that reads everything you write, and they know how important it is because it became the symbol of what was right and wrong in the world, right? Everything revolved around the January 6th narrative. So very important that we stay on these stories, which we'll continue to do, because when it comes to the truth and justice of January 6th, like that has to happen. And Congress needs to stay on this over time.
You want inside baseball there?
Yeah, can we say some inside baseball on air?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can tell you with absolute authority,
Yes.
that late January, after the inauguration of President Trump's second term, early February, President Trump himself gave a directive to Speaker Johnson to authorize and form a new January 6th select committee to investigate what the previous select committee covered up, what they did wrong, which they the truths that they manipulated into being. Okay, and so that directive was given, and last week there was a meeting in the Oval Office with President Trump, and in that meeting, President Trump was surprised that his directive had not been followed through with, that committee had not even been seated yet. He was upset about that. So once again, it's back to the drawing board, or back to the Speaker to say, Mr. Speaker, where is this committee that I directed you to form, to give full subpoena power to give authorization to staff correctly, and to make it a select committee and not under the authority of some other, major committee like Judiciary or House Administration or something like that. But instead, what was happening behind the scenes were the powers that be in Congress were manipulating that to obstruct the formation of this committee. There's some reasons why they want to hide that. I don't know if we want to get that inside baseball right now, but the reason why they're wanting to obstruct that is not the point right now. It's the fact that they are, and what they were doing was limiting the scope of the committee to basically make it inert, to make it flaccid, that it wouldn't have any power.
This is a problem.
This is the problem. And this is coming from the GOP. This is not the Democrats obstructing this. This is the Republican leadership obstructing the formation of this new committee.
That will light your hair on fire right there. That will, I'm sure once everybody, when they internalize what you just said, that is going to make the American people very, very angry. We have to take a break now. Steve Baker is going to stay with us. This is the first time, Steve, that we have been in person together since we started another story. We'll break down a little bit more about Congressman Corey Mills and the FBI. They're back. We have some new updates for you right after this. Well, family farms aren't shutting down because they've stopped working hard. They're shutting down because all the meat in the grocery store isn't actually coming from them anymore. It's coming from overseas, and most people don't even know it. 85% of the so-called grass-fed beef on the U.S. shelves, it's imported. That's why you need to get all your meat from goodranchers.com, because they're 100% American, born, raised, and harvested by family ranchers who have been doing it the right way for generations. And it's not just about patriotism, it's about taste as well. And Father's Day is right around the corner, so you can grab their King Cut box loaded with thick cut ribeyes, strips, and fillets, and it's a gift that your dad will love. And if you subscribe today, you can get your pick of free meat for life. You can choose from Wagyu burgers, hot dogs, bacon, or chicken wings in every box that you have for the lifetime of your subscription. Plus, when you use the promo code Gill at checkout, you can get an extra $40 off. So go to goodranchers.com right now to support American farms and eat better meat. Don't forget, use the promo code Gill, and that gets you free meat for life and $40 off. It's Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. Well, we broke the news about Congressman Corey Mills. If you paid attention to the show, this is not going to be news to you, Steve Baker. Matthew Peterson was kind enough to let me bring Steve Baker into the story once we got to the FBI parts. We were like, you know what? Steve Baker is the man to break all this down. And it was exactly the right call, because Steve, you have taken our story to levels that we never really thought were going to happen with the potential alleged, right? All the things that we need to say for legal rogue FBI agent here in this story. So go ahead and give everybody up to speed a little bit, and then you have some even new information since we last saw each other.
I mean, 3 weeks ago-ish, we broke a story about a alleged rogue FBI agent who was not only allegedly investigating our sources, or, well, okay, let me back up a little bit. According to our sources, this agent was investigating Corey Mills' alleged stolen valor issues. That's the way she, Shay D. Tally Bradley, we'll just call her Agent Shay D, had been.
I still can't believe that's her name.
That's actually her real name. And so Special Agent Shay D was positioning herself as investigating Corey Mills' alleged stolen valor issues, right? But it is a federal crime, actually, stolen valor. And so that seemed legitimate. And to our sources who had been working on this for some cases years, months and years, they'd been working on these in the background. These are citizen open source investigators, doing this thing because they care about it. They've got a background in the military. They care about stolen valor. They've been looking into this for a lot longer than we have. And what we discovered is that there was an agent investigating Corey Mills and obviously reaching out to these sources. That sounds all good. And to our sources, they thought this was fantastic. Finally, all this work we've been doing for so long is finally coming to fruition. It's the opposite of Reagan's, 9, scariest words in English language. I'm here, I'm with the government, I'm here to help. Right. Instead, I'm with the government, I'm here to help. And they're like going, thank God.
Someone's finally heard us. Finally. They've heard our cries.
And so they just started giving them everything. This agent, when I say them, this agent, Shady. And so then it switched, and she said, well, we're not really so much interested in stolen valor anymore. In fact, we're dropping that because there's no there. There's not enough information, proof there. There's enough plausible deniability. But what do you know about his business dealings? And it shifted, and all of a sudden our sources start going, wait a minute, what is this about? And that's when you guys brought me in, somewhere in the middle of all of this. And so we started looking at the agent.
Yeah, and hold on, just before you go on, I mean, this is also true, like, up to this time, at some point, these sources told you, they told Gill, oh, there's an FBI agent involved here.
And they told me, oh, you actually have a ton of information about this guy that even we didn't know. I would love if we could just, pass your contact info along to this FBI agent.
Right.
And I said, absolutely. That was March 31st. It was in text messages. I've
Yeah.
turned them all over to Steve for his investigation now, and here we are.
So we start becoming suspicious that maybe Special Agent Shady, former colonel in the Army, by the way, incidentally, was maybe not investigating Corey Mills, the congressman, but maybe was investigating not only what our sources knew about him, but also what we knew about him. When I say we, Blaze News, I might even just be implying somebody else at this table right now. We'll get to that in a moment. So the point being is that it became very curious and more curiouser as we began to look into this, because on April 11th, one of our sources had a sit-down meeting with Agent Shady at a Starbucks in Orlando.
Where all FBI agents just go to whole official meetings. Yeah.
Exactly. And
all on the up and up.
In which she not only told our source, we're no longer interested in stolen valor, but by the way, would you be interested in going undercover as a CHS, a confidential human source, for pay and investigating another lady involved in this?
Matt's not a lady. So
Matt's
it's me.
not a lady.
Another lady.
Peter Gill, not a lady.
He's not a lady.
No.
The only lady
See,
involved.
who else did we have on bylines? Oh, we had, the only other lady was Jade, our source, who was in the story.
Yeah. That's who she was asking.
Who she's actually sitting down with. So
Yes.
Jade would not be investigating herself. And the only other option would be
Me.
Jill
It's
Savage, Blaze. And so now it's pretty much, game on for us. So, all right. So I'm going to do
That's the backstory.
I'm going to do
That's how we got
lightning
here.
round, the lightning round now. So now I think we actually have a public corruption issue. This is beyond a news story. I'm thinking that we actually have a potential crime being committed. So I contacted the Tampa field office of the FBI, and I asked for a public corruption supervisory special agent, public corruption SSA.
I remember this, and this was
Weeks
a while
ago.
ago. Yeah.
A month ago.
Yeah.
They denied that. They just would not hand me over to anyone. So, great. So I'll go to national. I went to the national office of the FBI, national intake, and I called them and I went through all the processes. And, of course, when you give the name Stephen Baker, other things come up on their screen, but that's another story. And so they're worried about. So when I asked for
See our previous segment.
Right. Yeah.
so when I asked for a public
See our previous segment. Yes.
So when I asked for a public corruption SSA at national, they said to me, okay, we've got all your information. We might, literally said might have somebody get back to you. I waited 2 days.
Right.
I'm a resident of North Carolina. Well, my field office of the FBI is in Charlotte, North Carolina. So as a resident of North Carolina, I am trying to report a crime. And by the way, I'm identifying myself on each one of these steps as my name is Steve Baker, Blaze Media Journalist. I'm not calling for a public affairs official. I'm not calling to get information or a statement. I'm calling to report a potential crime. I call the Charlotte field office, would not give me to anybody. In fact, the Charlotte field office, all of their phone numbers relayed me back to national intake. Through our sources, I was able to get the actual public corruptions SSA's name in Charlotte. I called back to national intake in DC and said, I need you to put me on the phone with this guy. Named his name, and they transferred me back to Charlotte to his phone. Nobody answered. Got an operator. They took my information and said, okay, all right, well, I'll get back to you. Never did. So Thursday now it's been 4 weeks ago, I wake up and I'm just PO'd. And so in this phone, previous to him becoming the director of the FBI, I'd been introduced to Kash Patel by Glenn Beck. We exchanged phone numbers. I also had his personal assistant's phone number. And I composed a very short but concise and descriptive text of what we were going through, and that I needed to report a potential public corruption issue of one of their agents, possibly breaking the law. Many laws, by the way, in this process of this investigation. And so within seconds, I had a call back. And for the next 2 days, 2 full business days, Thursday and Friday, 4 weeks ago, they were relaying to me what the ongoing process as they began to investigate this internally. Now, I'm talking to the 7th floor of the Hoover Building. This is national headquarters of the FBI. I'm not talking to some public affairs official in Tampa. I'm actually communicating directly to where I'm being told. I'm being told specifically that Kash Patel has been notified. I've been told that this has been placed on Dan Bongino's desk. I have been told now on Friday of that week, I've been told that this has been elevated to, this is their quote, elevated to general counsel. All right. Now, during this entire time, they are literal keystrokes away from being able to look up and see if there's a open case file number on either Agent Shady investigating the Congressman, or investigating our sources, or investigating you, or Blaze Media. And
they didn't find anything.
They didn't find anything. In fact, what happened by close of business on Friday, after 2 full days of investigation, they came back and gave us what all of our sources, and look, when I say all of our FBI sources, it's not just our whistleblower friends, which are
we have a lot,
legion, but we have sources currently employed with the FBI. We have sources that are retired from the FBI, multiple. They all came back to me after I read this statement from them, and they were like, "Wow, just wow." We've never seen the FBI say anything other than we can't comment on an ongoing investigation.
They're saying we don't know of this investigation.
That's what they told us.
We're going to look into this.
They said, We have no knowledge of this.
Yeah.
We're going to look into it, and obviously any type of corruption like this, we will get to the bottom of it. Because I specifically asked the 7th floor of the Hoover building for 2 things. This is what I wanted to know. I said, if we are off track, because we don't want to ruin the relationship that we have established with Director Kash Patel, if we're off track, I said, send up a flare, give me a bat signal, and say, back off. I said, give me a nod and a wink and let me know. And the nod and the wink was the unprecedented statement that we are unaware of this, something that they were only keystrokes away from finding out.
So take us now to the update of this story, and there's an interesting twist and turn from
Bring
the
us
FBI.
up to date.
So yesterday, out of the blue, I've been a little bit distracted by other affairs, and so out of the blue, Joe Hanneman, my partner in crime at the Blaze, he sends me a message and says, I just got an email from the FBI about the Agent Shady Tally Bradley. He goes, so I went and looked in mine, and sure enough, they had copied both of us. So this is an email from the Tampa field office. Good morning. The FBI Tampa Public Affairs Office saw the recent article referencing Special Agent Shay Tally Bradley. We have no record of Blaze Media contacting our public affairs office for a statement. Well, no duh. I didn't contact their public affairs office. I contacted for a public corruption SSA.
And remind me, did they call you back?
No.
Oh, that's right.
They never
that's
did.
Right.
And you asked her a few questions.
Right. I did actually contact. Actually, we very politely ambushed Agent Shady Tally Bradley at a Memorial Day event outside of in a suburb of Orlando. So we did do that. To which she said, "I have no idea what you're talking about," over and over and over again. And so remember, in the first paragraph of this letter from the FBI, they said, we saw the recent article. All right. Second paragraph. As a matter of longstanding policy, the FBI does not confirm or deny the existence of any investigations or FBI matters. The FBI does not release investigation details related to tips or leads. However, we can confirm that information received from the public is reviewed and vetted. So this is coming from Tampa. Now remember, I've handled this at DC level, top floor of the Hoover building, not with Tampa field office. Finally, they said any further media inquiries must be directed to the FBI National Press Office. I'm like, what?
We skipped a couple steps from Tampa. We went straight up to them. We've already done that.
You said you read the article. This email is referencing our article.
Right.
If you had read the article, you know that I got our statement from Hoover Building, DC.
You got a
7th
statement.
floor.
So we got a statement from the top. So is this just like dumb stuff, or is this like a CYA thing going on, or like what do we make of this?
So, as we mentioned before, we do have our sources. So we've run this by our sources, and the hilarity, right? We're talking about sarcasm after criticism, and basically what they're saying is it could be either or what you just said. Either this is a CYA issue, or they're looking at us and going, "Okay, media." This is who we are, and this is all you are.
I love it. This obviously isn't going to be the end of this story. We will still have so many more twists and turns. And honestly, the best part is we don't always know where it's going to take us. It has been very interesting to see where this one has gone. So, Steve Baker, thanks so much for the update, and I'm sure we'll have more soon.
Jill, Matt, thank you.
All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be back to wrap it up right after this. Father's Day is almost here. If you're still scrambling for a gift, don't worry. We have a good one for you. He doesn't need another tie. He doesn't need another coffee mug. What your dad really needs is something that speaks to who he is. We know our culture out here is mocking masculinity, all the traditional values in fatherhood. He needs a place that still has his back. And that's where Blaze TV comes in. It's unapologetic, and Blaze TV stands up for what's right. It's faith, family, and freedom. So right now you can grab our Father's Day special with an extra $30 off an annual subscription when you use the code DAD30. It's good for this week only. It's fast, it's easy. You don't have to wrap any gifts. And it's something that actually means something. So if you've waited to get something, this is your moment to win Father's Day and give him something that actually matters. Go to blazetv.com/BNT and use the code DAD30 to grab the deal that shows that it's actually cool to love America. We had Representative Brandon Gill on the show yesterday, and we had some fun with him. So for our soundbite of the week, we definitely had to go back to, have you ever used the women's restroom? Take a look.
Mr. Governor, do you think that biological men should be able to use women's restrooms?
I'm not sure how this has to do with immigration.
It's just a yes or no question.
Why are you?
It's very easy to answer. Do you think that men should be using
doing
women's
fact
restrooms?
finding? I'm sorry.
Do you think men should be allowed in women's restrooms?
I'm not sure why this has come to this issue.
You
It has
tweeted
nothing to
that
do
as
with
a
immigration.
protest against President Trump, everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today. Have you ever used the women's restroom?
That's a thing of beauty right there. And it's a perfect way to end our week here in Washington, D.C. And we want to thank Congressman Brandon Gill for joining us, and Congressman Marlin Stutzman, and all of our other guests, MP, because it's been such a good week out here.
Yeah, as usual, Washington, D.C. opens up welcoming arms, and lots of magical things happening. And you can see another stage, kind of taking place in the administration now. You can see things getting very serious, people bunkering down, and factions forming, but team excellence coming together, and very interesting to see where we're at right now. It's really, it's beyond like momentum. Now it's real battles and stuff is happening.
Yes, it's serious times for serious people, because they know that this is the time that we need to start moving.
Yeah, I mean, the clock is ticking. And what this administration is going to accomplish is going to depend on what is substantially done now. So now you're in really the first stages of potential substantial moves that can have really long-term effects. And so you find people, battling over what that should be, or just moving forward. I mean, it looks like a Department of Education, from what we've seen, they are moving forward.
Well, that's going to do it for us here. Thanks for watching here this week, and we'll see you back in Dallas on Monday.